Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
It's alive!
Welcome to Where the Weird Ones Are.
Every time I speak, I want the truth to come out.
Powerful figures in Hollywood as well as powerful politicians who are in fact not human. They're reptiles or they're lizards or perhaps extraterrestrials.
I don't think it is a human. I think it's a Sasquatch.
Go ahead and run. Run home and cry to mama.
Let's get weird.
What's up, you fucking weirdos? Welcome to another episode of Where the Weird Ones Are. My name is Kevin, but you probably already knew that, and if you didn't, well, now you do. So today's episode is with author Michael Thompson. I have to say, I met him at Encounter Quest down in North Carolina, and he left a pretty significant impact on me just meeting him in person. We got there. I got there and I met Jenny and Oren from Bizarre Encounters. They're the co-hosts over there. If you're looking for other podcasts, you should definitely go check out Bizarre Encounters there. That show is really good. And actually, the host of that hosts another show called Inquiries of Our Reality, who he actually had Michael on his podcast as well, and that was a really good episode. I listened to it the other day. But with that being said, so I went there. If you've been following along from the beginning, then you know that Jenny and Oren have been on twice. One episode sharing Jenny's stories, and then the other one was Oren's stories. So I got to meet them. And I was telling him about the comic book that I am working on with Emily, the fine art medium on Instagram. And I was like, maybe I could start vending at one of these things. And they're like, I don't know, man, maybe. He goes, and they're like, I don't see many. I don't think I've ever seen a comic book stand here. So, you might like corner the market maybe, or some shit like that. And anyway, so I went walking around. They had the main room and then the theater. And then you go down the hall, and they had a couple of vendors down in the hall. And then they had a whole nother room. And that's where I ran into Michael. And he gave me this, he just did this whole spiel on his book. So he went through, every summary, and he gave it, an enthusiastic, characteristic feel to it, what he was saying, and he was really into it, and it intrigued me so much that I was like, hey, I bought one of his books, World of the Orb, which actually I started reading a couple days ago, and it's really good. I'm enjoying it so far. I don't have a shit ton of time to read, but I do make time to read pretty often, so I haven't gotten very far into it, but just like anything else, it's a work in progress. So, anywho, he has a few books. He's working on the series. So he has a he has a comic book, and that's what I saw the comics. And I started walking towards his table, and then that's when he stood up. He saw me looking at him. And that's when he got up and introduced himself and started going through his books. And the first books, he just made the fourth book of Chicken Boy, which he was created when he was young. And I thought that was the most amazing thing. He does the illustration, he does the storyline all himself, and I dug it, man. I really did. I really, really did. And then he introduced me to World of the Orb, which I believe he wrote in 2018 or 2019. And then he went into Winslow Hoffner's. I have to look at it because I don't want to get the name of it incorrect. Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters, which is it's about a fisherman, and he encounters sea monsters. And the book is about telling stories and stuff. And Michael gives us an insight on that. And he also, I believe he said that he's working on a sequel. I don't know if he's going to continue for more books. I can't remember if I asked him that or not. But if I did, it will be in there in this episode. And but anyway, so I wanted to read a couple of the reviews on Amazon for World of the Orb real quick. So just to, it might tantalize your what the fuck is the word that I'm looking for? Your imagination, or your want. Anyways. So the first review is that I came across was from December 26, 2016. So he wrote this book a long time ago. Let me start by saying that I am an amateur author myself. When I picked up World of the Orb online, I wasn't sure what to expect. The last experience I had of Thompson's writing were entertaining children's books under the title Chicken Boy, which were, while delightful, slightly simple. However, is entirely new vein for him, one that complements him beautifully. And then it goes on like this whole spiel. And then I got another one that says, World of the Orb is a very authentic work. You can tell that this is a passion project, and the story feels believable. Get this book. Great author, great heroes, great adventure. Couldn't put it down. The story had everything I look for in a fantasy book. Good plot, amazing characters, and a splash of humor that kept me waiting for the next chapter. I have to say, the most enjoyable part was the relationship between Andy and Veronica. So, if that doesn't intrigue you to read World of the Orb, then I don't know what to tell you. I guess maybe reading books is not for you. But I must say, when reading it, it gives I've read a little bit, and it gives me like the 90s movie vibes, where it's kids and they go do something that they're not supposed to, and they get trapped in a world far, far away. I don't know. I can't remember. There's a few movies like that from the 90s that I enjoyed when I was a kid because I grew up in the 90s. So far I'm enjoying it. I really like it. Michael, keep writing. After I read this, I'm going to read the sea monster one, and then hopefully whenever you get out the sequel, I'm gonna fucking read that shit. And man, yeah, so listen to this episode. I hope you enjoy, and check out his stuff. You can get him at michaelthompsonbooks.com. He goes by mthompson_books on Instagram, I believe is what it is. But if I got that incorrect, you can figure it out when he tells you in this episode. So, anyways, If you have anything weird you'd like to discuss, whether it's an encounter with paranormal, supernatural, you got a conspiracy you'd like to talk about and share your knowledge about that specific conspiracy, I am down to hear it. So hit me up at wheretheweirdonesare at gmail.com. You can also get me on Instagram where_the_weird_ones are. And I'm pretty active on Instagram, so you can definitely DM me there and we can get something going. Again, I really appreciate everybody that listens to this. I know there's the podcast thing is pretty saturated. There's fucking millions of podcasts out there, and if you landed on this one and you actually enjoy it and you and it resonates with you, then I appreciate you. I definitely am not opposed to feedback if you are willing and able. If you want to give 5 stars, that's cool. If you want to give 4 stars, 3 stars, 2 stars, 1 stars, or give any kind of review on any platform. Currently, the only ones that I can see is on Spotify, and I don't think they allow you to do reviews. So, with that being said, I should probably get into the Apple and the iHeart so that I can see the other reviews. Yeah, but if you want to, you can comment on YouTube too. I definitely see those. Or you can just message me directly. That's cool too. Anywho, I hope you all have a phenomenal day. And until next time, my friends, stay weird.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Let's get weird! Let's get weird! Let's get weird! Let's get weird! Weird, get weird!
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Where the Weird Ones Are. Today I have Michael Thompson. He's an author. I met him at the convention I told you all that I was going to, which was Encounter Quest. That was down in North Carolina. Michael, how is it going, bud?
It's going great. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Fantastic. I am so excited to have you. The book that I bought from you at the convention, I have not gotten into yet, but I will be shortly. So just for everybody to see real quick that watches the YouTube, this is the book that I bought. It is called World of the Orb. So what drew me to Michael was when I went to his stand, he was very excitedly telling me the stories of each one of his books as he went through kind of like the summary, but he was given like a little act to go along with it. And I got very excited and I got very drawn in, and I knew that I had to at least buy one of his books before I walked away. So Michael, why don't you, if you don't mind, tell everybody listening and watching a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm an independent author and illustrator. I've been writing and publishing my work since I was 13 years old. That's when I created my Chicken Boy series. It was based on a doodle and a story that I had written in my 4th grade writing journal about a chicken who eats radioactive birdseed and becomes a superhero. And my 4th grade teacher, Mr. A, was a big inspiration to me. And thanks to him, I felt so inspired that I kept writing. And eventually I started my own company that I use to publish my books. And we have 4 books in the Chicken Boy series now. This is one of them. This is the latest and greatest, Chicken Boy and the Might of the Monkey Man. each one, Chicken Boy and all his pals save the world from monsters and mad scientists in a town where nothing's ever quite normal. And so this is a great read for like middle grade and up, 9 and up. Fun for the whole family, very funny and engaging.
Nice.
But at the same time that I was conceptualizing those books, even way back when, I was creating what would eventually populate the world of Encartai, my fantasy world in World of the Orb. And that sort of came about because back in the day, I was always doodling epic battles in the margins of my notebooks, creating all sorts of different creatures, fantasy creatures, blending in some of my own stuff, magic systems. And I knew I wouldn't have a chance to, I ended up creating like an encyclopedia's worth of all this knowledge of an alternate world. And I knew that I wouldn't have a chance to write a story about each one of those creatures or societies. So I created one cohesive world that I could have all of my creatures live and exist in. And then I thought how fun it would be to have a couple of teens from Earth get lost in that world and have to use their wits to find their way home. And so that's what World of the Orb is. This was my debut novel. After my first 3 Chicken Boy books, I started writing some bigger books, and this was my first big book, and it was my first award-winning book. And it's about 2 best friends on a field trip to the Museum of Natural History who sneak away from the group and break the one rule, which is not to go in the artifact room and definitely not to touch the orb. And when they do, they're zapped into this alternate world of monsters, myths, and magic that sets them on a harrowing treasure hunt across these strange lands to find Earth again. And so that's what World of the Orb is about. And most recently, I'm writing about sea monsters in my Winslow Hoffner series. And this is my sea monster cryptid book. So I know you're into cryptids. Yes. So this is, and all of your audience might like this as well. This is folkloric fantasy is what I call it, on the high seas, about cryptids, sea monsters, epic urban legends that few have beheld. But there's one man who happens to have seen them all, this guy on the boat right here, Winslow Hoffner. And he's regaling his tales of adventure to a couple of journalists who discover their small harbor town is harboring incredible secrets. And so that's a little bit about what I do.
It's awesome, man. Awesome.
Thank you.
Where can everybody find you and find your books?
You can find my books on Amazon, or you could request them at your favorite local bookstore. And you can view the entire catalog of all of my work on michaelthompsonbooks.com.
Nice, man. So what was the inspiration for Chicken Boy? I know you said you started it in 4th grade. Mm-hmm. But what really, your doodles, I would assume, but like what led into you being like, oh, this is a kind of a story that I want to take an avenue down?
Well, I was a big fan of the old school 90s Marvel cartoons. Chicken Boy, his origin story is a big homage to Spider-Man. You know, Spider-Man gets his powers from a radioactive spider bite. Chicken Boy gets his powers from radioactive bird seed. And so that's sort of part of the levels there. And I loved animals. I love Looney Tunes. So kind of my art style is inspired a bit by that, and lots of my action, my cartoon action that goes along with it. So I was inspired by the animals of Looney Tunes and the heroes of Marvel. So I wanted to make my own animal superhero. And when I was very young, I was watching an animal rescue show. And I saw this baby king vulture. If you look at Chicken Boy, he doesn't quite look like a chicken.
Yeah.
And I saw him on the TV. He had these puffy white feathers and these big old feet that looked too big for his body. And they were nursing him back to health. And he was this little puffy little guy. And so I thought something struck me inspiration wise. So I had to cartoon him wearing a cape. And I didn't think Vulture Boy sounded very good, so I named him Chicken Boy. And and so it's been great. I actually, not too long ago, I returned to the school where I first created Chicken Boy. I was brought in as an inspirational speaker to talk to the kids. Yeah. And when I got there, I was very surprised. They were renovating their whole library, and they had brought in this group called Mural on the Wall. And the kids had voted on their favorite literary characters to decorate the library wall. And so you had Harry Potter, you had Dr. Seuss, you had Arthur the Aardvark, and then on one of the walls there was Chicken Boy and all of my characters. And so I came in and it was this huge surprise, and I just thought it was thought it was amazing. And so the kids had voted, and they voted for Chicken Boy.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. Was your teacher still there too?
His wife still teaches there. He moved on to another school, but it's not far. And every year I go back and I talk to the kids about writing and publishing. I had been doing that since I had actually, even graduated his class. Every year I went back and I talked to the kids. And I had originally, Chicken Boy was a spiral bound book that I did at Kinko's, which I'm not sure if that store exists anymore, but I spiral bound it at Kinko's. And I brought it in fourth grade, Chicken Boy and the Wrath of Dr. Dimwad. And it sort of became like the class mascot. Everyone loved Chicken Boy. And originally, before that, I used to get punished for drawing in class, but my teacher, Mr. A, he was the first teacher to not punish me for drawing in class and instead encourage me to draw and tell stories. And so I felt supremely inspired, and that's sort of how that came about. But every year after that, I would come back and I would talk about storytelling, and he still had that copy left in his classroom library. And so the kids were reading it as though it was a regular book and asking me questions and wondering how they could get their own copy. And so part of the reason that I was inspired to start my own company was so that every kid in Mr. A's new classes could have their own book. So when I turned 13, that's when I started my company, and that's when I started publishing. And Chicken Boy and the Wrath of Dr. Dimwad was republished. I re-illustrated it, came out again, and we did this animal drive. So this animal, because I loved animals, so every kid who brought in a can of food for the animal shelter got a free book. And so that's how it all sort of sprang to life on that day.
Wow, man, that's super inspiring. I admire you for going straight into your dreams as soon as you could, and that is something to admire for sure.
Thank you.
So not to get too much off of you and your books, but I want to tell you that I've wanted to be a writer my entire life too, but I've never tried to really pursue it like you. And what's funny is because what inspired me was also a teacher. It was my second grade teacher. She always had us write these little stories, and I used to rush a lot of my stories just so that I could present them to the class, because she would laminate them. And sometimes she wanted us, so it'd be like a little picture, and then you got the lines for your story, and she would laminate the covers and put them together as a book.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So I would try as fast as I could some days when I knew that we were going to be telling our stories, to draw the pictures as fast as I could. Sometimes they would end up being black and white and they would look like crap, but I would tell like these just strange stories about whatever happened to pop in my head that day. So but yeah, and I told you when I met you at the convention that I started working on a comic book.
Oh yeah.
And I am in the skeleton part of it. I'm just getting the script out, getting that all jotted down. I have the characters, I have the storyline, and I know how I want to go about it through the series and stuff like that, but it's just the part of actually telling the story and getting the word bubbles and stuff exactly how you want it. And then I got to give that script to the illustrator so she can put that together as best as she can. And she goes by the Fine Art Medium on Instagram if anybody wants to look her up. Wicked sweet lady. She is a medium psychic, which actually her episode is coming out this week, but yeah, anyways, so I wanted to ask you, when you are during your writing process, what is your kryptonite? Like, what gets you like off track?
Ooh, that's interesting. Well, first of all, I think your story is fantastic, by the way. I remember, and you showed me that little preview on your phone, that you had a little sneak peek at what was to come. And I think the art is fantastic, and the concept's really cool. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that come to fruition.
Thanks, man.
And yeah, it's great. A teacher can can definitely make all the difference
For
in the
sure.
world. So shout out
For
to
sure.
teachers.
Yes, absolutely.
As far as what gets me off track, I am a perfectionist, and I really I do like to get things just so. I'm very driven by making sure that the rhythm of the story is also quite good. There's kind of it's it's hard to describe, but there's kind of like an invisible rhythm within the sentences.
Mhm.
um and I think and as a writer, I think you'll understand that, and anyone who's a lover of words will know the imperative to choose the exact right words. um and I'm very keen on, whether it's the beginning of the book or just the beginning of the chapter, getting that perfect opening line.
Mm.
uh and so, but one way I've learned to remedy that is to sort of just step away from the computer a second and sort of change my environment. I like to go outside sometimes, and I'll bring a notebook, and I find, a messy lined notebook sometimes to be a little bit less daunting than a blinking cursor on a blank page. uh, and so you can sort of scratch out lines and then write your way into it, and then eventually, like panning for gold, you arrive at that perfect sentence, and then you're like, I got it, and then I can rush back up to my computer and then let it flow.
Nice. Nice. So you're the sea monster the book so that's the current series you're working on right now?
Yes, yes. So Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters is the first one, and we are going to have a very exciting sequel. So the book takes place in Nova Scotia, and it's about this fisherman who just happens to find himself at the wrong place at the right time to behold these unbelievable sights and tell these unbelievable stories to a couple of journalists in the area. And as they drift more and more into Winslow's a bit more magical world, they sort of have to undergo some extreme changes to adapt to that. So it's a great book, and it's inspired by some of my time doing more journalistic style writing at the end of high school and between high school and college. I did some journalism writing, and then of course my love for the otherworldly. So this brings the magic into our real world, and it's based on accounts of monsters that people claim to have seen. And in this book, we have one man who happens to have seen them all.
Yeah. So do you know like how far you want to go with that, like how many books you're planning for that series? Because I know a lot of writers, they have like each story for each book already laid out before they even get into it. So I'm curious, how many books do you think you're going to be producing out of the series?
Well, and I think this is Where the Weird Ones Are exclusive. I don't think I've said
Ooh.
this publicly, but there are going to be 5 books in the main Winslow Hoffner series.
Okay.
And the sequel is going to come out this year. At this point, I'm aiming for fall. And the sequel will involve some cool Celtic cryptids and mythology.
Ooh, perfect. I like that. That sounds very interesting to me.
Yeah.
So, I also, so following you on Instagram, I see a lot of conventions. Is that something you're super into? Like, obviously you're vending too. And I see all the pictures of the people holding the orb and stuff. So how many conventions do you think you go to in a year?
Oh boy, I don't know. Sometimes I use my own website because I forget, what's coming up next. But I do as many as I can. Certainly the ones that are nearby to me that I don't really need to get a hotel for. It's kind of a sure thing for me. I'm like, let's go, and that's always good. And lately, I've been adding in more of the cryptid themed conferences because those are perfectly on theme for the Winslow book. And
For
it seems
sure.
like lots of them are popping up now. All of the ones that I've done so far have been the first of their kind, so that's extremely exciting for me as someone who's loved cryptids for a really long time.
Mm.
But as far as Comic Cons go, I've been doing those since 2017. I've been doing the Comic Cons, um, and then beyond that, it's just been like your standard Barnes and Noble and local indie bookshop signings. But I expanded into Comic Cons, and now I'm moving into blending in appearances at the cryptid shows too, and I love both of them.
Nice. Well, I'm certainly glad that you did, because if you didn't, we would have never have met. So
Exactly, yeah.
So I saw that you were going to be going to what is it called? The Monster Fest, I think you said, in Ohio, Canton,
Yeah,
Ohio, I think.
Monster Fest, yeah.
Is that
Very
the
exciting.
is that a first one as well of its
It
kind?
is. It's the first of its kind. It's in Canton, Ohio. It's
Nice.
happening on June 3rd. And it is, if any of your viewers are familiar with the Small Town Monsters documentaries, this is the Small Town Monsters official first ever convention. And so they're going to be screening their films. They're going to be having all sorts of amazing cryptozoological guests like Lyle Blackburn, like Cliff Barrickman, Lauren Coleman, as well as all sorts of exciting vendors. I'll be there, of course. I'm so excited. And Cryptids of the Corn, who they'll
Yep.
be there as well. And all kinds of great stuff. I'm really looking forward to that.
Nice. Shit, my phone shut off. I have all my questions for you on my phone.
Oh, good.
So growing up, who would you say was your favorite author?
Well, my favorite author, that would have to go to my great grandfather, Lawrence Schoonover. He was the big inspiration to me.
Oh, wow.
I'll give him the title. He's actually on my wall back there. And
Yep.
I just discussed this with Shane on Inquiries of Our Reality, but we were talking a little bit before the show about my autographs. And right when I had started putting together this autograph wall, because like I said, I've been doing the conventions, and so I get to meet some people and say, hey, will you sign this and stuff like that. But since I started doing that, right when I started, it was known by some of my extended family members that my great grandfather was a big inspiration to me, because World of the Orb is actually dedicated to him. I had never actually gotten to meet him, but one of my extended family members had sent me a shipment of a bunch of his books just out of nowhere, and I had this big box, a bunch of his books, and I thought it was amazing. I picked one up, I opened it. As soon as I opened it, to the page that I opened, out tumbled, like a leaf, this book plate, and it was an autograph from him. And so it said, "With the compliments of the author, Larry." And I just thought it was it gave me chills. And so
Wow.
and I had gotten that picture recently from my at the time from my grandmother. And so I thought, okay, he wants to be on the wall, so I added my great grandfather to the wall, and he's right there.
That's awesome, man. That is super cool.
It was pretty amazing. I was also a big fan of. I also have some other writers up there. I've got Stan Lee. That was my first ever autograph, which was a gift on Christmas, because I love Spider-Man. I love all
Yeah.
those. And then I also have R.L. Stein, and he was
R.L. Stein. Yes.
from the Goosebumps. And
Yeah.
so it's pretty. That was a pretty cool one, because I had almost met him at the National Book Festival. I was the next in line, and then they cut off autographs. And I was like, okay, he's gotta go.
No.
And it was so sad. I took a picture with him, like just so far away. But I wrote him, and then he sent me an autograph picture. And so that ended up being added to the wall of wonder as well. So
That's pretty cool, man.
yeah.
That sucks though. There's to be right there and then just to be like, excuse me, I'm sorry, but this line's ending here now.
Oh yeah, it was crushing at the moment, but I think it was meant to be, because he was only signing books, and they had a specific policy that he wouldn't sign photographs.
I gotcha.
And lo and behold, and again, because I was making this autograph also, it was kind of a special thing, and I'm totally cool with how it turned out.
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, you still got the autograph and everything, and he read your letter, obviously, so that's pretty cool in itself. So,
Very cool. Yeah.
let's see, what would you say is your favorite underappreciated novel?
My favorite underappreciated novel, World of the Orb by Michael Thompson. Let's see. I don't know. I'd have to get back to you on that one, but
That's fine.
yeah,
It's kind of one of those like questions where, because there's so many that you could choose from. You know what I mean?
yeah, I'd have to think about it, but yeah, I would recommend to your audience anytime you're at one of these conventions. First off, come to these conventions because they're super cool. You meet all kinds of great people,
Yes.
and secondly, it's a great way to explore independently published work, independent artists and independent writers, and because it's hard to market in a sea of traditionally published work as an independent artist, and so it's a great way to make connections that way.
It sure is. It sure is. I mean, I met a whole lot of new people just from this one convention. I met you. I met Ron Moorhead with the Sierra Sounds.
Yeah.
I met Daryl Sims. I met the guys from Cryptid of the Corn. I met another gentleman who writes books, Richard Rose. So I think this is the first one. Nope, this one's his first book, and this one's the sequel. So, Wild Eyed Southern Boys. I don't know if you ever. He was in the same room as you.
Yes. My dad picked up his book too.
Nice. So I got both his books and a T-shirt.
Fantastic.
So he was like, the first book is, I think it was $20, and then the other one was $10, and then if I bought both of them, it was $25 and a free T-shirt. And I was like, I'll do that because I mean I like to read anyway. So
yeah.
So what would you, when you read a book, what is your favorite spot? Like, how do you like to sit and lay down, or like, what is your favorite spot to be when you read a book?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I do like to read before bed, so I break out the flashlight and read my book there. And sometimes I like to read outside, with the birds and nature, and get some fresh air.
Yeah.
Perfect lighting from the sun, I enjoy that too. I like sitting on my deck.
Nice. That's it's kind of how I like to read out. Either it's kind of like sprawl out on my couch on when the lighting's not so good, but when it's super nice out, I like to set up my hammock and just sit outside.
Oh, I love hammocks. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
And yeah, I like being outside to begin with, just barefoot, feet in the sand or grass or whatever, wherever I'm at. And I'm always trying to get in my hammock when it's nice out, no matter what.
You can never have too much fresh air, for sure.
Not at all, my friend, not at all. So, sorry. So if you had to choose, what would you choose for a mascot, avatar, or a spirit animal?
Ooh, I've got, oh, there's so many. Well, if we're talking about real world animals, I quite like the owl. I have a little, my little icon on my website. If you go there, it's in the, that shares the space with the HTML, is an owl. And he's holding a little book, and I quite like. I'm proud of his design. He's a great horned owl, but his horns are made out of the quills of quill pens.
Yeah.
And then his beak is the little end of the pen, so it's like two converging quill pens for his little eyebrows / horns. And so that's my little logo there. And so I like owls. They got big expressive eyes, and
yeah, they do.
And they're quite perceptive creatures, and they're nocturnal, which I'm kind of nocturnal sometimes. But
it comes with the territory, I think, sometimes,
yeah,
especially when you're in the mode of writing a book.
Yeah, you can definitely become quite immersed, and
Mhm.
that's always I always just like to surrender to the story whenever I can, and let the
Right.
characters, take me away and tell me what their stories are. So in terms of real animals, I've grown pretty fond of owls, and then in terms of fantasy animals, I really like griffins. I've always thought they were really cool.
Yeah.
Part lion, part eagle.
Yes. I've always been intrigued by those as well.
Yeah,
So we have similar taste, my friend, similar taste. Uh,
excellent.
so with the fact that you've been going to these cryptid conventions and whatnot, I was curious if you've ever had like some kind of encounter that you found bizarre or um unexplainable.
I have yet to encounter any cryptids. I haven't encountered any unexplained animals or any UFOs or anything like that. I've had my share of sort of spiritual moments and moments that I think are spiritual, like the signature tumbling out of the book,
That for sure is
things
something.
like that,
Yeah.
things like that. Um, I did have a pretty funny encounter with an angel, I believe. I can tell you that story if you're interested.
I would love to hear it, my friend.
Okay, so this I always think is a pretty funny story. So, like I mentioned earlier in the show, I used to write journalistic stuff. I was on the school paper in high school. I believe I was a sophomore at the time, and my assignment was to write a story on one of these this certain style of buses. I forget the name of the bus, but they were buses that went maybe a little bit farther out, but there was only like one or two students on a time. And so my assignment was to go check those out and see, and see what that was all about. So I was interviewing the bus driver, interviewing the students that were riding the bus. I was taking pictures of the bus, and this was eating up a lot of my time to get on my own bus. And so and I was just having the worst luck. It was like an awful comedy movie. Like I dropped my recorder. I went to pick it up. The batteries fell out of my recorder. I went to pick it up. My books fell out of my backpack. As I was picking up this, and I was like, oh my gosh. And the bus driver's like, are you okay? And I said, I don't know. And so, and I look at the time and I see I am running very late, and the buses are going to start leaving soon. And I was like, oh no. And so I gather up my stuff that it's all falling apart. I dive under the bus to get what remains and pack it in, and I start trekking down the center of the bus loop. And so my bus is always in the same spot at the same time, and I'm pretty confident that I can get there. And I let my my muscle memory carry my legs and direct me there, but it's not there. And I say, oh no. And so I continue all the way down. It's not at the end. I go all the way back up to the beginning. It's I can't find it. And now I'm running back and forth, and it's so embarrassing. And because now I'm the only one left in the bus loop, and I'm running back and forth. I've got this gigantic backpack that's like hitting either shoulder as I'm running. And at a certain point, and I'm panting, and I'm like, and I think this was at a time where like I would have had to have waited a significant length of time before I could get anyone to pick me up too. And I had lots of homework to do. And I was like, oh, this is going to be so terrible for me if I can't find my bus. I'm running, and it's getting even worse because now there's now the doors are closing. So each bus I pass, the doors are like boom 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 boom. They're closing. I'm like, no no no. And now what's even worse is the windows on the of the buses are opening, and people are sticking their heads out and pointing at me and laughing. and and I'm desperate, and I just it's a small thing, but I was like really not wanting to miss this bus. So I just look up at the sky. I say, angels help me. And I just yell at the sky. And at that very moment, this little chickadee shows up. It flies, and it's keeping pace with me at my head level. And I look left, and it looks at me, and it's like flapping, and then it speeds up, carries on, it goes between these two buses. I see So normally the buses sort of fan out, they kind of accordion out. They go into the sidewalk like this, and then each one sort of comes in on a diagonal.
Yeah.
But right at the middle of the loop where the curve was, there was a bus, there was another bus, and then I see barely between them more yellow. And I'm like, oh, and so I follow the bird that then lands on what would you say, the big side view mirror.
Yeah.
And I look and I see it's my bus number. And it was completely hidden. I would never have found it. I thought I was being clever running down the middle, but I would never have found it. It was exactly on the other side of these two buses that had come in an odd way and was completely camouflaging it. And so, and the bird had flown at my head level, flown through that small space, landed on the window of the bus. I come and I see the number, and the bird's looking at me. I say, thank you. And then I get on my bus just as the doors close.
Wow.
So, yeah, there you go.
That's a good story. Holy cow. I'd say that was an angel.
I believe so. Yeah, it was, and it's a really funny story too.
It is a funny story. It made me laugh.
Yeah.
So how many hours do you think you dedicate to writing each of your books at a time?
Well, I try to do like a full day of work every day. You know, I start when I after I have my coffee, and then I end when I go to sleep. I'm pretty bad about logging hours exactly, but
I gotcha.
But I do like, you know, I work all day every day except for like Sunday, and then, you know, I can set my own schedule so I can, you know, do that, and then and try to be social, leave my cave every once in a while, and, you know, see a movie with some friends, or play Dungeons and Dragons or something. So
yeah. How long do you think, how long did it take for World of the Orb to be completed from start to finish?
Right. World of the Orb in its current state took about 5 years to write, but that was because I had actually started it while I was in high school.
Yep.
And once I had finished college, then you know, the doors flew open wide, and I was able to write the whole thing, the what remained of it, and get it out pretty fast after that. But that one was about a 5-year process.
Okay. So this question comes from my son.
Oh.
He wants to know, how do you come up with the names of your characters?
That's interesting. Very, very good question. Sometimes they just sort of come with the characters, like Winslow Hoffner. It just sort of came as I was writing it. There was Winslow's a very dialogue driven book, whereas a lot of my other books are at least 50-50 dialogue imagery. Winslow is very dialogue driven, and a lot of the story is told within the dialogue. So as I was writing it, it just sort of flowed. The line was, you know, our main character, John, he was trying to get a word in edgewise. He's like, Mr. Hoffner. He's like, didn't I tell you to call me Winslow? And he's like, no. And he's like, oh, well, call me Winslow. Mr. Hoffner, too formal. Got it, Chaplain. And so, and that's the funny thing as well, because Winslow's always calling people by their last names. But sometimes there's some symbolism laid within the names, like one of our main characters from World of the Orb, her name is Veronica Blair, and she sort of came with the name Veronica, but when figuring out her last names, I was looking into different options, and Blair, it simultaneously met like a lovely field, but also a battlefield, and that I thought encapsulated Veronica pretty well. When they first meet her, she's described as she has these very striking eyes that Marvin, our narrator, describes as both dazzling and frightening. And so I thought that the duality between a field and a battlefield in Blair, in the meeting in that name, I thought would be a perfect last name for her. So it's a little bit of a mixture. Sometimes they come through right away, and sometimes I do a little bit of research, and I'm a big fan of symbolism.
Nice. That is an interesting way to go about it, because I just sit there and I go, what should I do for my story? So what do you read your book reviews?
Do I read? Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm always very grateful. You know, anytime someone takes the time to write a review, it's I always try to remember to ask and remind people, and so I've got these little slips where I'm like, hey, you know, after you enjoy the book, if you could leave a review, it helps me out, and because that boosts you in the algorithm, and for independent bookstores or or even big bookstores, it kind of legitimizes you in the eyes of the industry manager, well, not the industry, the inventory managers,
Yep.
To take a look at that and take a chance on an indie book. And so they definitely help a lot, and I'm super grateful to every single review.
Have you ever gotten a negative review?
I've gotten no, I think they've all been fair. I got maybe one where I was like, well, you know, come on, you know. But you know, it is what it is, and everyone, that's the sort of the nature of art.
Oh,
People
true.
have their people. It's subjective, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's just how it is.
And you don't let that affect you, correct?
Not at all, because my goal is to bring the story to fruition how it comes to me, and I can only write the story the way it comes through. And so
Mm-hmm.
as long as by the time it comes time to publish, if I am feeling as though I've brought it to life in its fullest fruition, then that's all I can do. My first goal is to create the book as it comes to me, and so that's it. And then my second goal is to find as many people who would adore the story and cherish the characters as much as I do.
Right. Oh, it's getting dark out over here. So I'm pretty sure I already know the answer to this question, just because of the things you've already said. But does your family support your writing and stuff? I think your mother was at the convention with you.
Yeah, both my mom and dad came, and they've both been fantastic supporters of my work. They like my books. My dad's a big reader, and you know, for him to enjoy my books on the level that he does is a big compliment. My mom's been a huge supporter from the very beginning, and so yeah, my first ever book was dedicated to my family, and so they've been great. They enjoy the stories too. I remember thinking back to an earlier part of this show where you were so excited to write your stories because you wanted your teacher to see them, and I definitely identify with that as well, from the teacher perspective, but also from my family perspective. My grandfather as well. I always enjoyed, when I was really young. I would write stories just so I could hear my grandfather read it in his voice, and he was just a spectacular reader. And so he had read a lot of World of the Orb. It didn't come out officially before he passed away, but what was pretty cool, and I don't know if I've said this on a show before either, but he used to edit my work. You know, you would make edit copies and give them to your family. You know, I call that the in-house editing process.
Mhm.
And so all the people closest to you, who are down to read it, would get a copy. And my grandfather, I would get him a copy. After he had passed away, I was sifting through some old papers, and I had discovered one of the edit copies that I had given him of World of the Orb, and I was doing some rewrites sometime later. I think this was a little while later after he had passed, and I had put in just sort of like a placeholder. I hadn't come up with a name for the main currency that would appear in World of the Orb. It was like, you know, it was like your standard coins. You know, it was kind of the silvery gold coins, doubloon-like things, and I just had put, you know, I think it was like just pieces. I just put like pieces, which is kind of like a catch-all fantasy currency term but I wanted to come up with something unique, and I put it there as a placeholder. And there was a line off of it, and in his handwriting, he had written, I think he was intending to write silver, but it was abbreviated as SIV, SIV, and I thought, there's the name of the currency. And so because of that little abbreviation that he wrote in the margin, editing it, the currency in World of the Orb are called Civ.
Wow, that's cool, man.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. So I don't cry often, but when you were kind of going through that, I got a little teary-eyed. So not only because you didn't get to finish it before he passed, but in thinking of, for myself, somebody, my uncle who passed away a few years ago, will never get to see anything that I if I get anything published ever. So to me, for me, he was probably the biggest male role model in my life. So I can relate to the feeling, I guess, in a way. Although he did get to read a lot of it, and he got to do the editing process with you, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I love that for you, that he got to you guys got to bond over that, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, and I think it's amazing that your parents are going, tagging along to these conventions and stuff with you and supporting you. That is amazing in itself. So I feel like just that support alone can make or break anybody, you know what I mean? And
Definitely.
it's obviously super helpful to you. And I can see just the way you and your mom interact together when I saw you, because I don't think I saw your dad at all.
Yeah, my dad was at a lot of the what would you call the performances, the shows.
Speakers.
Yeah. He's more of a skeptic when it comes to the paranormal and stuff, but I've been bringing him to these places, and he's been going to the shows, and he really enjoys the shows. Back in the day, we would always argue about Bigfoot and stuff, but lately he's been becoming slightly more of a believer, at least with Bigfoot. I showed him the enhanced Patterson Gimlin film, and he's like, "That's pretty good," and I'm like, "I know." And so anyway.
So do you believe in Bigfoot?
Yeah, I do. I think Bigfoot's out there, and there's, every culture has its own Bigfoot, and there are things in the fossil record that are basically exactly a Bigfoot. And the Patterson Gimlin film is fantastic. The Freeman film is fantastic, and there's been certainly some very, very good casts with dermal ridges and the mid-tarsal break and all that stuff. And the more I go on shows like yours, and the more I go to shows like Encounter Quest, and you see more and more stuff, and I think it's definitely out there, and not only that, but interacting with people who have actually had personal encounters, and hearing their testimonials is quite impactful.
Right, exactly. So my son used to watch Finding Bigfoot, I think is what the show was called. This was like years ago. We lived in this house out in the middle of nowhere, and I remember my ex-wife and my son were sitting on the couch watching it, and I was just like, this is so stupid. I was like, Bigfoot's not real. And then it was probably about 2 years later, my ex-wife and I had separated, and I was in that house by myself with my dogs, and then I saw these red eyes in the woods and a pack of coyotes, and I was just like, what the fuck is that?
Oh my gosh.
I'm pretty sure that it was like a dog man, but I couldn't tell what it was. I just saw eyes, and it was accompanied with a pack of coyotes.
Whoa. Did you have a good gauge on like the height of it, the distance off the ground?
So where the eyes were, there was, up here in Maine, a lot of the properties, I think New Hampshire too, but a lot of the properties are separated by rock walls. Okay. And I had this huge, and the rock wall that was on the side of my house there was this huge boulder, and it was a little bit of woods, and then there was a field. So it'd be a little bit, there were some trees, the rock walls, so a little bit more trees, and then there was a field, and then there was nothing but fucking woods behind my house. But yeah, so it was right by this boulder, and it looked like it was just like peering over the boulder. So the boulder was about my height.
Wow. Yeah, definitely.
So it would have been around like 6 foot, maybe a little over 6 foot tall.
That's incredible.
So yeah, and then what happened
it's not going to be a person, because persons don't have eye shine like that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, I don't think we have eye shine at all, really, unless it's in a picture.
Yeah, certain pictures I think will affect your, the visual of the eyes, but we don't reflect light like that.
Yeah, for sure. So I thought it was really weird, because I had woken up to my dogs going crazy, and I could hear the coyotes outside, because the coyotes it was not every night, but it was at least once a week or so, or maybe every other week. They'd be running through, or they'll be out in that field, and there was just enough light from like the moon, like there was some overcast too, but just enough so I could see into the field, but I couldn't see in the trees, amongst the trees, but I could see those fucking eyes, and I was like, what the fuck is that?
Wow.
So
amazing.
Yeah, I ended up my dogs were going crazy. I ended up grabbing my gun off the wall and sitting on the couch, and then when I did that, both my dogs just came up and sat on the couch, and I just sat there.
Good dogs.
Yeah, and they just sat, and it was almost like they were scared too, or they just felt my energy or whatever, and they just kind of like hung out with me. But I still have one of them now. She's getting old. But at that time she was a puppy. The other dog was a bit older. So but yeah, so after that I was like, I started looking into things a little bit more, but not too much. And then I thought podcasts were stupid, so I didn't really listen to them until like late 2020. And then I started listening to them, and I was listening to conspiracies, and then I started listening to paranormal stuff, and then I got into the cryptid stuff, and I was like, wow, there's something here. And then they started talking about the red eyes, and I was like, that's what I saw.
Yeah. It's amazing how everything leads to everything. It's neat. Like I can, like in terms of my book signings and stuff, I always like thinking back. It's like, hey, if I hadn't gone here, I wouldn't have met this person, and if I hadn't have gone here, I wouldn't have met this person. And it's like, it's happenstance is kind of an interesting thing, and
for sure.
So I definitely believe in like purpose and things of that sort, because it's neat seeing how all things fit together in retrospect.
It is neat. You're right. Yeah, I think so too. So another question that I have for you is, if you had any advice to give somebody who is starting out writing, what would you give?
I always say, write what you love. Because if you write what you love, there's chances are someone out there is going to have the same taste as you. Sometimes people try to like look at trending things, or like try to write what they think other people would like. But if you don't already love it yourself, that passion's not going to come through, and it's not going to be as full and rich of a story as it possibly can. So no matter how specific you think your interests are, specificity is actually the most important thing. We had this mantra, kind of, I guess you would say, that we used to have in one of my creative writing classes way back in high school, which was, the more specific the image, the more universal the message. And that's when it comes to writing. But I think when it comes to writing imagery, but I think it applies to writing as a whole. The more specific you are, I mean, look at the cryptid conventions that I'm doing. That's a very specific theme. And so, and my cryptid conventions are, I would say, have like double the readership of like a standard convention. So the more specific you get, you're actually diving deeper and being immersed more so into a community that I think will love your stories as much as you do. So write what you love, and if you do that, you're going to find people, because you exist and your interests exist. So they're definitely out there. I think that's what that means. So
Nice.
that's what I would say.
Perfect. So my last question that I have for you is, are you finding fulfillment in your life doing what you're doing?
I am. I do find fulfillment, and I think that everyone should chase fulfillment in their lives, and do what they feel called to do, whether it's writing, any sort of. And when it comes to a creative career, if you're being constantly sort of if your mind is being filled with these images or these lines, for whether it be writing or poetry, or maybe it's music or anything, whatever it is, creation is a very immersive and process, and if that's calling to you, that's a sign that something is meant to be made, I think. And so just go for it. I definitely, and I do find fulfillment in what I do. I find fulfillment in a perfect sentence, and I certainly find it when the entire experience has been transferred from a mental one to a physical adventure on the page that I can share with other people. I love that.
Nice, man. Nice. I love everything you just said. That's awesome. So anyways, this has been really fun for me. Not only because it was fun to meet you, so it's been fun to connect with you, and it's fun to hear your perspective on your work. And I look forward to reading this book, which I will most like, because I'm reading one book right now. It's in the other room, but it's Behold a Pale Horse. So as soon as that's done, I'll probably be starting this. So we'll probably be starting your World of the Orb next week. So for anybody listening or watching, please check out his books. Again, I'll show you the cover art real quick, if you can see it in the light. World of the Orb, Michael Thompson. You can get him at michaelthompsonbooks.com, correct?
Correct.
That's where you get his books. He's on Amazon. Actually, I'll let him tell you real quick where he's at, so I don't mess it up.
Sure. You can find my books on Amazon, or they're available upon request at your favorite local bookstore. And you can check out my full library of work at michaelthompsonbooks.com.
Nice. You heard it, guys. So I am super happy to have had Michael on. I hope you all enjoyed the things that he had to say, and I hope you check his books out, because I think he definitely deserves some love. He's a very bright light, very warm energy, and I feel like he is going somewhere especially with this new series you're writing. It's very intriguing. As soon as I'm done this, I'm probably going to move on to those. So yeah. And that is the show. So if any of you guys out there are interested on being on the show, whether you have your own encounters, you have books like Michael that you want to talk about, get me at wheretheweirdonesare@gmail.com, and you can follow me on Instagram _the_weirdOnes_are. And Michael, you have a Instagram as well too, right?
Yes, it's mthompson_books.
Nice. So go follow him, or else I'll give you some of this. Just kidding. All right, everybody. It's been fun. It's been real. Stay weird.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.
Because in the end, none of us have very long on this earth. Life is fleeting. And if you're ever distressed, cast your eyes to the summer sky, when the stars are strung across the velvety night, and when a shooting star streaks through the blackness, turning night into day, make a wish.